The 2nd of June, 1953. A historic day unfolds in the United Kingdom. Inside Westminster Abbey, Queen Elizabeth II is crowned, beginning what would become the longest reign in British history. For the first time, television cameras capture every moment, broadcasting this monumental event around the world. Reporters fill the streets outside, eager for even a fleeting glimpse of the royal family. But suddenly, something unexpected happens. Among the crowd, a sharp-eyed journalist notices a tender gesture. An important guest gently brushes a piece of fluff off the shoulder of Peter Townsend, a divorced Royal Air Force officer. That small, intimate act hints at something far greater, a secret romance. Yet, in 1950s Britain, such love was forbidden. The Church of England did not allow divorcees to remarry, and as Queen Elizabeth II was now the head of the Church, this affair placed her in an agonizing dilemma: protect the traditions of the crown or support her sister's happiness. The woman at the center of this storm, Princess Margaret, the tragic sister of Elizabeth II, the birth of a royal rebel princess. Margaret Rose was born on August 21, 1930, at the majestic Glamorous castle in Scotland. Her father was Prince Albert, Duke of York, a man known to his family as Bertie. Bertie's childhood was far from easy. Tormented for his speech impediment, he was mocked even by his own father and siblings. Many mistook his stammer as a sign of weakness or even low intelligence. This harsh treatment shaped him into an introverted, sensitive man, standing in stark contrast to his charismatic older brother, Edward VIII, affectionately called David, within the family. As the second son, Bertie never expected to wear the crown, but history had other plans. In 1936, Edward VIII abdicated after less than a year on the throne, sacrificing kingship for love with the twice-divorced American socialite Wallis Simpson. In that moment of crisis, Bertie became King George VI, forever altering the destiny of his family and of young Margaret, the mother behind the throne. Margaret's mother, Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, came from a noble Scottish lineage, descending directly from Robert the Bruce. Raised at Glamorous Castle, she embodied grace, resilience, and quiet strength. When Prince Albert sought her hand in marriage in 1920, she refused him twice before finally saying yes in 1923. Though she was not of royal blood, her entry into the monarchy symbolized modernization and hope for a changing Britain. She became, in time, the beloved Queen Mother. This is just the beginning of Princess Margaret's story, a tale of duty versus desire, tradition versus rebellion, and love that dared to challenge the crown itself. In 1926, Elizabeth gave Prince Albert something priceless: confidence. She encouraged him to seek help from the Australian speech therapist Lionel Logue, a decision that would change his life. With time, patience, and persistence, Prince Albert gradually overcame his debilitating stammer. Their journey together became legendary, later immortalized in the 2010 Academy Award-winning film The King's Speech. The couple went on to have 2 daughters: Elizabeth, born on April 21, 1926, the future Queen Elizabeth II, and Margaret, born 4 years later in 1930. The birth of Princess Margaret. Princess Margaret entered the world as the 4th in line to the throne, behind her uncle Edward, her father, and her sister Elizabeth. Her arrival was celebrated in grand royal tradition, a 41-gun salute fired from both the Tower of London and Hyde Park on the morning of August 22nd. Yet, there was an unexpected twist. The Duke and Duchess of York had been anticipating a son. The newborn remained without a name for nearly 2 weeks until she was christened Margaret Rose. Margaret honored the legacy of several Scottish queens, while Rose symbolized the white rose of the medieval House of York. Superstition also played a role in the young princess's story. Her birth was not officially registered until October. Her father, the Duke of York, hesitated. He did not want his daughter to be the 13th name on the parish register. Finally, at just 2 months old, Princess Margaret was christened in the private chapel at Buckingham Palace. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Dr. Cosmo Lang, presided over the ceremony with 5 chosen godparents in attendance. Within the family, she was simply Margaret, but to her sister Elizabeth, she was affectionately called Bud. Not yet a full-grown rose, but the promise of one yet to bloom. A princess born into power and prestige, Margaret was born into what many considered the most famous family on earth. Her grandfather, King George V, had ascended the throne in 1910 and presided over an empire stretching across nearly 14 million square miles, with a population approaching 500 million people. Though his role as a constitutional monarch limited his political influence, his image was everywhere, on coins, stamps, and banknotes spanning the globe, from Canada to Cape Town. By the 1920s, the British monarchy stood as the last great royal dynasty of Europe. The crowns of Russia, Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Turkey had all collapsed during and after the First World War. Only the House of Windsor remained, carrying the weight of centuries of tradition and global prestige. This prominence was reflected in spectacular ceremonial events such as the state opening of Parliament and the annual celebration of the sovereign's official birthday, known as Trooping the Colour. Alongside these grand affairs, the royal calendar was filled with glamorous social traditions, the races at Ascot, glittering balls, and endless garden parties. The British court was officially based at St. James's Palace, but the monarchy's heart beat from its iconic residences. Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle, homes of the crown since the reign of Queen Victoria. Summers were spent at the breathtaking Balmoral Castle in Scotland, while Christmas was always cherished. At Sandringham House, King George's beloved retreat. This chapter of history reveals not only the grandeur of the monarchy, but also the intimate details of how Princess Margaret entered a world of immense power, privilege, and expectation. A world that would one day become the stage for her struggles, her passions, and her defiance. King George V and his wife, Queen Mary, were above all committed to preserving the dignity of the British monarchy. Yet they understood that the world was changing. At a time when monarchy seemed increasingly outdated, George V took bold steps to modernize the institution and secure its survival. When he became king in 1910, he abandoned the monarchy's opposition to the Liberal government's plans to limit the power of the House of Lords. Later, in January 1924, he made history by appointing Ramsay MacDonald as the first Labour Party Prime Minister. Although that first Labour government lasted less than a year, the King and MacDonald developed a surprising personal friendship. When MacDonald returned to office in 1929, the bond between monarch and minister remained strong. Despite these progressive steps, George V was naturally conservative. He expected his family to embody tradition, discipline, and decorum. Into this world, Princess Margaret was born and raised. Childhood in a royal household. For the first 6 years of Margaret's life, the family divided their time between 2 homes, their 5-story London townhouse at 145 Piccadilly and the Royal Lodge at Windsor, a charming country residence restored under the direction of the Duchess of York. Prince Albert, recalling his own difficult and often lonely childhood, was determined to give his daughters something different, a happy, warm, and playful family life. Evenings were filled with laughter, the sounds of splashing in the bathtub, pillow fights echoing through the halls, and noisy family games that brought a sense of normality into royal life. Still, like most aristocratic children of the time, Elizabeth and Margaret spent much of their days in the care of nannies. Their primary caretaker was Clara Knight, who had also served as nanny to the Duchess of York herself 3 decades earlier. Education and influence. The Duchess of York believed strongly in tradition when it came to her daughter's education. In her view, royal princesses needed to learn grace, manners, and impeccable decorum, while intellectual studies should remain limited. In 1932, she appointed Marion Crawford, a Scottish governess, to guide the young princesses. Known affectionately as Crawfie, she had a profound influence on their upbringing. Unlike most royal tutors, Crawford sought to broaden the horizons of Elizabeth and Margaret. She took them on walks through Hyde Park, rode with them on buses, and even guided them through the London Underground. These small but daring acts allowed the princesses to glimpse ordinary life outside palace walls. Crawford remained in royal service for 15 years until both girls reached adulthood. However, her relationship with the family was permanently damaged in 1950 when she published The Little Princesses, a memoir that revealed intimate details of their childhood. In the book, she portrayed Elizabeth as disciplined, graceful, and dutiful, while describing Margaret as wild, untamed, and rebellious. For Margaret, the book was nothing short of a betrayal of trust. Yet even in her anger, she knew there was truth in Crawford's words. Unlike her sister, Margaret was spirited, passionate, and driven by her creative side. She became an accomplished singer and pianist, displaying a talent and flair that hinted at the complex woman she would grow to be. This early environment, strict tradition on one side, playful warmth and artistic spirit on the other, shaped Princess Margaret into one of the most fascinating and controversial figures the modern monarchy had ever seen. Princess Margaret was known for her talent in mimicry, often making her family laugh with her playful impressions. Unlike her sister Elizabeth, who was disciplined and studious, Margaret preferred music, dancing, and storytelling, often delaying lessons with her vivid imagination. Her grandmother, Queen Mary, encouraged history and geography, taking the girls to museums and galleries to instill a sense of royal duty. During the early 1930s, their uncle David, the Prince of Wales, frequently visited and played with the girls. But his relationship with American divorcee Wallis Simpson created tension within the family, casting a shadow over Margaret's childhood. From an early age, Margaret appeared in public ceremonies such as King George V's Silver Jubilee procession in 1935. Less than a year later, the king died, and Margaret, then only 5 years old, struggled to understand the loss, telling her nanny, "Grandpapa has gone to heaven, and I am sure God is finding him very useful." When George V died, Uncle David became King Edward VIII, but his determination to marry Wallis Simpson, something forbidden by the Church of England, threw the monarchy into crisis. This scandal would reshape the royal family and mark the beginning of the challenges that shaped Margaret's life. Summary: the abdication crisis and Princess Margaret. In the mid-1930s, the British monarchy faced a turning point. King Edward VIII's relationship with Wallis Simpson sparked national controversy. When Wallis obtained her divorce, the king declared he would give up the throne rather than give her up. On December 10, 1936, Edward VIII signed the instrument of abdication, and the reluctant Duke of York became King George VI. The former king left for exile in France as the Duke of Windsor. For young Princess Margaret, this was a time of great change. She and her sister Elizabeth left their beloved Piccadilly home for Buckingham Palace, seeing less of their parents as royal duties consumed them. Still, the public embraced this new royal family as a refreshing contrast to scandal. On May 12, 1937, George VI was crowned at Westminster Abbey. Margaret walked proudly beside Elizabeth, guided by their grandmother Queen Mary, who worked tirelessly to instill royal duty and culture. This moment marked not only the rebirth of the monarchy after crisis, but also the beginning of the very different paths that would shape the lives of the two princesses. When King George VI ascended the throne, Princess Elizabeth became heir, while Margaret remained free-spirited yet close to her sister. With the outbreak of World War II, the princesses were moved to Windsor Castle for safety. Despite talks of evacuation to Canada, Queen Elizabeth insisted they stay in Britain. Life at Windsor was harsh: cold rooms, air raid shelters, rationing, but the girls contributed by growing vegetables, knitting for troops, and performing plays. While Elizabeth was shaped into a disciplined future queen, Margaret developed her bold, independent spirit. During World War II, Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret brought life and creativity to Windsor Castle, staging pantomimes and entertaining guests. As the Battle of Britain ended and the threat of invasion receded, the sisters traveled to Sandringham and Balmoral while contributing to the war effort. During these years, Elizabeth met Prince Philip, beginning their lifelong connection, and Margaret first encountered Group Captain Peter Townsend. When the war in Europe ended on May 8, 1945, the princesses joined jubilant London crowds, witnessing the public's adoration for their parents, King George VI and Queen Elizabeth, in a historic moment of national celebration. After World War II, Princess Elizabeth became engaged to Prince Philip, and the royal family toured South Africa, marking Margaret's first foreign trip and extended time in the public spotlight. Margaret quickly captured attention with her charm, beauty, and lively personality, becoming a fashion icon with Christian Dior's new look. She carried out royal engagements across Britain while also attracting media attention for her nightlife and social life. Following Elizabeth's marriage in 1947, Margaret emerged as one of the most eligible and glamorous women in the world, admired internationally and celebrated for her style, charisma, and vivacious spirit. Princess Margaret's post-war years were marked by glamour, romance, and public scrutiny. She attended late-night parties, mingled with celebrities like Danny Kaye and Noel Coward, and was photographed traveling abroad, including a controversial swim in Capri. Beneath her playful persona, she was intelligent, religious, and sensitive. Margaret fell in love with Group Captain Peter Townsend, despite his being married, while her father, King George VI, struggled with declining health. On February 6, 1952, the king passed away, and Elizabeth ascended as Queen Elizabeth II, with their mother becoming the Queen Mother. Margaret now faced a new chapter in both her personal life and royal responsibilities. After King George VI's death, Princess Margaret found comfort in Group Captain Peter Townsend, sparking a deepening romance. Townsend divorced his wife, allowing their relationship to become public, but the Queen Mother and government officials opposed the match, fearing controversy like the 1936 abdication crisis. Under the Royal Marriages Act, Margaret required the Queen's permission to marry. During Queen Elizabeth II's 1953 coronation, a subtle gesture between Margaret and Townsend sparked media rumors, intensifying public scrutiny. Ultimately, Townsend was posted abroad in July 1953, forcing the young princess to endure a painful separation while navigating her royal duties and emerging into the international spotlight. Princess Margaret remained devoted to Group Captain Peter Townsend despite public scrutiny and government opposition. Parliament debated royal regulations, and the Queen insisted Margaret wait until her 25th birthday to marry. Throughout, she continued her royal duties, including historic visits to Germany and the Caribbean, showcasing her charm and diplomacy. When she reunited with Townsend in October 1955, the press followed relentlessly. Ultimately, the Queen informed Margaret she could only marry Townsend in a civil ceremony, requiring her to renounce her royal titles, succession rights, and income. Faced with an impossible choice, Margaret's love story highlighted the tension between duty and desire within the royal family. After her breakup with Peter Townsend, Princess Margaret remained a prominent figure in British society, hosting lively parties at Clarence House and charming the public with her charisma. A brief engagement to Billy Wallace ended after his holiday affair, while Townsend returned in 1958, though their romance could not continue. Margaret's social skills and charm made her an invaluable asset. as Queen Elizabeth modernized the monarchy, even as former colonies gained independence. By her late 20s, she met Anthony Armstrong Jones, an extroverted and artistic companion who shared her love of art, ballet, and theatre, marking the start of a new chapter in her personal life. Princess Margaret and Anthony Armstrong Jones developed a private romance through their shared love of art and fashion, meeting discreetly to avoid public scrutiny. The Queen and Queen Mother eventually gave their consent, and the couple became privately engaged at Balmoral in 1959, with the official announcement in February 1960. Their wedding on 6th of May 1960 was the first televised royal wedding, watched by 300 million people worldwide. They honeymooned in the Caribbean on the Royal Yacht Britannia and later settled in Kensington Palace. Armstrong-Jones became Earl of Snowdon in 1961, but adapting to royal life proved challenging, and tensions in the marriage would follow. Despite his informal approach with royal staff, Anthony Armstrong-Jones, now Earl of Snowdon, often faced his wife Princess Margaret's rebukes. Restless after closing his photography studio, Snowdon struggled to find purpose. In January 1962, Margaret helped him secure a position as artistic advisor for the Sunday Times New Colour magazine, a move that sparked public controversy over claims of royal favoritism. Earlier, on 3rd of November 1961, the couple welcomed their first child, a son named David, who assumed his father's courtesy title of Viscount Linley. The Snowdons soon traveled to the Caribbean for a holiday, leaving their newborn with a nanny. Even sympathetic reporters criticized Margaret for perceived self-indulgence and neglect of family duties. Unlike other royals who vacationed within the British Isles, the Snowdons, despite his informal approach with royal staff, Anthony Armstrong-Jones, now Earl of Snowdon, often faced his wife Princess Margaret's rebukes. Restless after closing his photography studio, Snowdon struggled to find purpose. In January 1962, Margaret helped him secure a position as artistic advisor for the Sunday Times New Colour magazine, a move that sparked public controversy over claims of royal favoritism. Earlier, on 3rd of November 1961, the couple welcomed their first child, a son named David, who assumed his father's courtesy title of Viscount Linley. The Snowdons soon traveled to the Caribbean for a holiday, leaving their newborn with a nanny. Even sympathetic reporters criticized Margaret for perceived self-indulgence and neglect of family duties. Unlike other royals who vacationed within the British Isles, the Snowdons frequented exclusive Mediterranean resorts hosted by elite figures such as Greek shipping magnate Stavros Niarchos and the Aga Khan. At home, they became Britain's most fashionable couple, with Margaret adopting simpler, chic styles influenced by her husband, including shorter skirts. They embraced modern social circles, befriending cultural icons like the Beatles, though Margaret remained acutely aware of her royal status, and her sharp disapproval toward overly casual behavior became widely noted. The couple continued visiting the Rotherhithe house until 1964, when the property was demolished for redevelopment. Back at Kensington Palace, Margaret gave birth to their daughter, Lady Sarah, in May 1964. Yet beneath the glamorous facade, marital tensions were growing. Snowdon increasingly preferred his work at the Sunday Times to royal duties, spending more time in his study and less entertaining guests. A major rift emerged in 1965 over a weekend retreat outside London. Margaret wished to build a house at Sunninghill near Windsor, while Snowdon secretly restored a Sussex cottage known as the Old House, despite outwardly agreeing to Sunninghill. Furious, Margaret rarely visited the Sussex property, finding it inconveniently distant from London. Outwardly, the couple maintained appearances, attending events together across Britain and abroad, but privately, the cracks in their marriage continued to widen. Behind closed doors, Princess Margaret's marriage was struggling. In November 1965, she and the Earl of Snowdon embarked on a highly publicized tour of the United States, highlighted by a visit to the White House hosted by President Lyndon B. Johnson and Lady Bird Johnson. They also visited Hollywood, where the princess clashed with stars like Elizabeth Taylor and Grace Kelly, most notably when Judy Garland declined an invitation to perform in her hotel room. With her husband often abroad on assignments for the Sunday Times, the 35-year-old princess felt bouts of loneliness. She sought comfort in heavy smoking and drinking. In early 1966, she briefly became involved with Anthony Barton, a family friend and godfather to her daughter Sarah. Rumors suggested her husband may have orchestrated this to maintain his independence. Later that year, she began a passionate affair with Robin Douglas Home, an aristocratic army major related to the former Prime Minister, Sir Alec Douglas Home. Despite his charm, public scrutiny forced Margaret to end the relationship in March 1967, and Douglas Home tragically took his own life in October. Though the couple publicly displayed reconciliation, their personal lives continued to drift apart. Margaret focused on developing her villa in Moustique-les-Jolies-Hauts while maintaining a presence at state events. She attended the 1969 investiture of her nephew, Prince Charles, as Prince of Wales at Caernarvon Castle, where the Earl of Snowdon's minimalist design approach won widespread acclaim. While Anthony gained recognition for his artistic talents and charitable work, Margaret's public engagements, such as her presidency of the Royal Ballet and her chancellorship at Keele University, failed to capture the public imagination. Internationally, the Snowdons represented the British monarchy with elegance. Yet by the end of a long Asian tour in September 1969, they were barely on speaking terms. Rumors circulated linking Anthony to 23-year-old Lady Jacqueline Rufus Isaacs, further fueling speculation about the couple's personal and marital struggles. In the early 1970s, Princess Margaret's social life became increasingly vibrant, with close friendships and romances, including a high-profile relationship with Roderick Llewellyn. Her marriage to Anthony Armstrong Jones, the Earl of Snowdon, was strained, and public scrutiny of her lifestyle and allowance added pressure. Despite challenges, Margaret pursued her personal happiness, including holidays in Moustique, while managing royal duties. By 1976, her relationship with Llewellyn became public, and she announced her separation from Snowdon, continuing her public engagements independently. Her bold choices and unconventional lifestyle captured media attention, highlighting her charisma and resilience within the royal family. In the late 1970s, Princess Margaret's public image suffered due to her relationship with Roderick Llewellyn and her glamorous lifestyle. Media criticism intensified after Llewellyn pursued a pop career, and she was seen enjoying the Caribbean sun, leading to debates over her royal allowance. Her health declined, including a hospitalization for hepatitis in 1978, during which she petitioned for divorce, granted 2 months later. Despite public scrutiny and health challenges, Margaret remained devoted to her royal duties and family. She traveled internationally, including to Tuvalu for its independence ceremony, and maintained her relationship with Llewellyn despite controversy. In 1979, a controversial remark about the Irish during a US visit further complicated her public image. These events highlighted her struggle to balance personal desires with public expectations and royal responsibilities. In the early 1980s, Princess Margaret faced security concerns, public scrutiny, and the end of her relationship with Roddy Llewellyn. Approaching her 50th birthday, she revitalized her image through plastic surgery and weight loss, toured internationally, and continued royal engagements. Following Llewellyn's breakup, Margaret felt isolated but remained a devoted mother to her children, David and Sarah, supporting their artistic pursuits. Her relationship with her sister, the Queen, improved, and she also developed close bonds with her nephews, niece Princess Anne and niece-in-law Princess Diana. Despite ongoing public criticism, Margaret maintained her royal duties, demonstrating resilience and adaptability amid personal and public challenges. In her later years, Princess Margaret navigated complex family relationships, drifting away from Princess Diana as her marriage to Prince Charles fell apart while growing closer to Charles. She faced ongoing health challenges, including a lung procedure in 1985, and continued to maintain her elegance, fashion, and public duties despite criticism and personal struggles. Margaret's private life, including her relationships with Peter,